See Ambassador Arvind Gupta. He is a very dear friend of mine. I have been knowing him for years. It has been a pleasure meeting you, and thank you for accepting our invitation. I would like to thank his co-author, also our colleague, who was also a journalist, well-known journalist, Rajesh Singh, and also wanted to thank Atul for making this happen. This is the our club. I believe all of you are aware, and you have been informed. Mr. Arvind Gupta, our secretary, will give you the briefing about introduce our guest. But I would like to tell you that I have read this book, and I thought for a moment that it's very boring. I didn't know where I was. Then I realized that the Mr. Arvind, have touched so many issues. In every chapter I open, there is a new talk. There is a new things. He talks about climate change. He talk of terrorism. He talks, name it, and it is there. He touched on history and contemporary history. And I love the way he referred, especially when he used the Vedic on his language in the book, which is quite interesting. It should be an interesting book for everybody, for even journalists, for writers, for who are interested in writing in contemporary topics. And I believe we will all enjoy the discussion. I'll give the mic to Mr. Prakash Nanda, who is our secretary, to introduce our chief guest. Thank you.
So welcome you all. To begin with, Mr. Thakur, I think he doesn't need any introduction. He comes here very often. This is the third or fourth time. Maybe that is the reason. We'll pass him over.
Thanks.
And as our president said, Mr. Rajesh Singh is the co-author of this book. And he is also co-author of a recently published book. I think this is the one, right? The Silent Enemy, Non-Traditional Challenges to National Security. He previously published books on Sikh separatism, then Bahubalis of Indian Politics. I think that's very interesting, from Bullet to Ballot, and Portraits of Hindutva, from Harappa to Ayodhya. He has also written 3 fiction thrillers, The Viper, The Conspiracy, and The Indian Pope. Before he took to writing books full-time in 2018, he was a journalist for over 2 decades. He worked for several leading publications in Goa, and after taking a short break from journalism, he served as a media advisor to the then Chief Minister of the State, Manohar Parrikar, who subsequently became our Defense Minister. In Delhi, he joined the Pioneer as the Deputy National Bureau Chief and later served as opinion editor. He regularly contributes articles to the leading New Delhi-based think tank, Vivekananda International Foundation on Governance and Public Affairs. He has also written for various online media platforms in the past. So welcome, Mr. Singh. And Ambassador Dr. Arvind Gupta, as Dr. Awaz said, is the director of the Vivekananda International Foundation. He was also Deputy National Security Advisor and Secretary National Security Council Secretariat. During 2012 and 14, he was Director General of IDSA. I think now it is Manohar Parrikar Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis. He was also Lal Bahadur Shastri Chair on National Security at the IDSA during 2008 and 11. He was also the managing editor of Strategic Analysis, IDS's flagship academic journal. He was a career diplomat. He worked at the National Security Council Secretariat as a Joint Secretary on deputation from the Ministry of External Affairs during 1999 to 2007. He is an honorary professor in Department of Defense and National Security Studies, Punjab University, Chandigarh. His book, How India Manages Its National Security, was published by Penguin India in 2018. He is the co-editor of the book, Indian Foreign Policy Surviving in a Turbulent World, published by SAYS Publication India Private Limited in 2020. So welcome, Ambassador Gupta.
I'd like ask Atul.
Thank you very much, sir, for having us here. Uh, I read the book when it was a manuscript, not published yet, and that's my another role in an avatar of a literary consultant to read the book in manuscript most of the times. And I'm so glad to see it is published now. It's being read widely and accepted equally positively from different corners, different sets of readers. I don't think Dr. Arvind Gupta sir needs any introduction, as you have rightly said. And you actually said about me, but I repeat it. It should be about him and Rajesh Singh ji. Rajesh ji was my editor in Point. I used to be a regular columnist there. The way we started our journey, and I should be blamed for bringing him full time into writing. I kept persuading him, go for long form, and he never looked back. Series of books. He was one of the most articulate writers I can count in India. Beautiful prose. The first thing, Rajesh sir and Gupta sir, beautiful prose you have drafted in the book. First of all, the language is so lucid, so readable. And believe me, I read it once again 2 days back, just not to miss any important point. I read it, and the flow was amazing because I'm a literary consultant as well. So that is another perspective to look at a book. Coming back to the topic, the book is pertinent in a way. It deals with not just the traditional challenges, but non-traditional challenges. And believe me, when you see The Silent in Me, you must be expecting that it will be filled with anecdotes, stories, case studies, etc. Of counterinsurgency operations, etc. But this book is not carrying really those details. The book delves deeply on 15 aspects, and they are scattered into 15 different chapters. And you'll be surprised to know the way it is woven. The challenges are counted like water. Seriously, water is going to be the next thing for which the world will fight. No doubt about it. Energy is going to be the core area of economic diplomacy in the coming. It has been already started. Then so many other environmental issues. The climate debate is so broad, so deep and meaningful in a way. It is also playing a pivotal role in shaping geostrategic choices of any country, including ours. Because we live in a troubled time when we talk about neighborhood, and while keeping the resolve of neighborhood first, in today's time, we can't really claim that any country is fully supporting us. We had seen it after Pahalgam attack. Not even a single country came forward and supported us, despite our growing height in the world. No doubt about it. So the neighborhood is troubled, and troubled for different reasons, not just for geostrategic consideration in a traditional sense. If Nepal is placing, aspirations at the fore and trying to struggle within, and that is also keeping some impact on our relationship with them. Bangladesh has a different story, but the modus operandi was more or less same when the unrest happened in both the countries. But finally, army took it control in Nepal, and because of cultural reasons, people connect and various other factors. Finally, we are being able to keep the good bilateral relations intact with Nepal. This is one of the achievements we have. India's position, India's stature has been growing in the world, and we are still being projected as a country, as a zone of hope for the rest of the world. Rest of the world. This book should be widely read for various reasons. One reason is that this book is giving prominent place to the new technology as one of the non-traditional, non-traditional, one of the key non-traditional challenges. New technology, I will say, use I end with 2 examples, Bangladesh and Nepal once again, because in recent times we had faced the real struggle from these 2 countries. Somewhere in both the countries, we had seen one linkages. That was technology, new technology, and sudden eruption of unrest into wide-scale vandalism, especially in Nepal. There was an app called Discord. Nobody was aware about it from outside. Not certainly, I was not aware till the time I read it in the newspaper that it was being used. TikTok was being used in Nepal, and everything played some role in making the unrest into a unprecedented vandalism that finally led to the destruction of national parliament, burning of Singhadarbar, the throne of the power in Nepal, made 250 years back by Rana rulers, Shah rulers. Then Supreme Court, all the records were burnt in Home Ministry. Largest media headquarters, Kantipur, that was burnt into SS. And so many destructions, many businesses, houses, more than 200 homes of the leaders were burned. Nobody expected it. Why this book should be read? This book is not doing the prognosis, but this book is giving smoke signal to the problems, how these problems can come together and finally led us into to conclude that what exactly are the imminent challenges ahead and how we should deal with them. For our perspective, because we are the world's largest democracy, truly robust democracy we have, and we have been a peace-loving country. Even with the growing stature, we are not being seen as a threat to the rest of the world, to the smaller powers. So while we are having supremely wonderful time in our foreign policy regime, this is the time this book should be reread by all the policymakers who are dealing with national security aspects, and not necessarily the threats will come in the coming times only from the arms arsenals. The threats will come in the shape of narrative. That is another aspect that book deals very widely. Narrative war is one thing, optics, technology, new technology, use and misuse of new technology. Too much cunning diplomacy in the climate area, and so many other factors. While we will have time to discuss all this in the terms of question and answer, first I will request Sir Dr. Arvind Gupta to kindly say a few words about the book, how you thought of writing this book, and why you chose these aspects to deal. Sir, over to
Thank, thank you, Wael Awadji. A very kind invitation. First time visiting this very hallowed club. I can see on the walls so much of history is there. And thank you, Atulji, Prakashji, for inviting us, both me and Rajesh, for this discussion. I'm not really prepared any script because it's more like a discussion. You said, how did we decide to write this book? So, as far as I'm concerned, I joined the National Security Council Secretariat in 1999 when it was just set up. And the charter of the National Security Council and National Security Council Secretariat is the part of that system, was that we should look at national security in a holistic manner and going beyond just the hardcore military issues, and look at issues like energy, internal situation, and water, food, energy, and so on. So people were thinking about broad basing the energy, the understanding of national security, and that is why National Security Council was set up. And we started working on these issues right at that point of time. So I was part of several discussions and meetings as we're trying to broaden this national security. At that time, of course, some issues which were uppermost, apart from the usual relations with our neighbors, Pakistan and China and other, we had just Kargil at that point of time. But other issues which are also very important was terrorism. Terrorism was very much on our mind and still is. So terrorism was at that time kind of a non-traditional security issues. It has various reasons and so on. So terrorism, how do we look at terrorism? Energy was also very much a issue that was considered that it should be part of. So similar issues we were discussing. Then we also had the National Security Advisory Board, which was another component of the National Security Council system. And National Security Advisory Board was basically non-officials, but very senior people who had dealt with various issues. So they also, in their own meetings, began to talk about a broad-based national security concept. And biological weapons, at that time SARS has happened, so how the health is going to be impacted, how would we meet our food needs, etc. So these discussions used to take place in some kind of a fragmented manner, But this idea that national security should be broadened and broad-based was there. And at that time, even in the international literature, these things were happening. And we have mentioned in our book how this whole concept was getting, a wider coverage. Human security issues were very important at that point of time internationally. R2P was being discussed those days, the responsibility to protect. That time, around the 2000, the UN had also come up with a panel, a high-level panel, which they had identified 6 or 7 clusters of non-traditional security issues, and they said that the UN should start looking at this. So it was all in the air. So this is where, at that point of time, the idea came to me, and I started studying this, and also started projecting it in our internal discussions. But of course, later on, I moved on to academia and so on. So this idea had been with me for a very long time, and I had been dealing with climate change since the 88 or 87, when I was looking at global warming, but more from the point of view of physics, because that was something that interested me. So climate change also became a very big issue. But the discussion at that time was that how is it that these non-traditional security issues are actually security issues? If you're talking about food, let the food department or agriculture ministry deal with it. If it is health, and today that mindset is there. So the linkages between these issues, which of course impacted the human security, but how were they linked with national security? And in this book, we have tried to, in each of the 15 chapters, we have tried to look at whether it is demography, whether it's technology, whether it's organized crime, whether it is terrorism, whether it is narrative. We have given some description at the global debate, then the national debate, and have tried to link these issues with the national security metrics. And now, of course, as we talk about national security, now I think it is quite common, and it's not very easy, not very difficult for me to convince people, if you don't look at the food or energy or water, your national security is going to be impacted. Now it is more. So this book is really looking at a series of those non-traditional security issues. I would say even that's in a way a misnomer. These are very traditional issues. And the core issues are basically connected with geopolitics and so on. But these issues, they are there with us from Kautilya's time. In Arthashastra, he talks about Yogakshema, he talks about treasury, he talks about Durg, he talks about intelligence, he talks about so many things which are important for a country's national security. But we had forgotten that. We have tried to point that also in this, that it is all there. And I think we should look at it in a holistic sense. I think the main message that we try to convey, apart from giving a lot of information and identifying various trends and so on, but the main message I think we're trying to say is that today the national security planners, they need to look at these issues in a holistic sense, and how to bring that on board when they're planning for national security as a whole. So in a national security metrics, energy, for instance, you mentioned, is very important. Food is very important. And overall international relations also, this has become very important. In fact, this whole afternoon, morning and afternoon, at the VIF, we were discussing India and the Indian Ocean, and the climate change, and the illegal fishing, for instance. Now, these were earlier considered to be just issues, but today they are very much part of international politics. They are very much part of national security, and we have to look at them. So the earlier we do it, the better it is. Of course, we also understand that it is not very easy. Not every issue has the same kind of a priority. So prioritization is also very important. And I think for every country, the metrics will change, but the issues cannot be, now no more ignored. And I can mention, for instance, in our discussions normally with the West Asian countries, with the Gulf countries, and even with Central Asian countries, now they are saying in high-level interactions, they say, please include food security in it. Now, food security is almost a survival issue. So when it becomes a survival issue, it becomes a security issue. So food security is becoming a very important. Energy security, of course, is linked with climate change, linked with technology, linked with so many other things. So we have also pointed that even issues like energy or climate, they are impacting directly the military preparedness. Because there is, see, tsunami, what happened to tsunami? When in 2004 tsunami, a lot of military infrastructure got destroyed. The bases, those kind of things. Today, climate change is leading to change of territory. The whole territory is changing. The coasts are getting eroded. The whole North Sea route has today opened up and leading to an entirely new kind of geopolitics. So all this is today connected, interconnected. So we are living in interconnected world. So the whole focus of this book is really to link up these issues which were earlier being dealt in baskets, but try to show that they're linked with our very, very core national security issues, and the national security planners should take into account while working out the for the the methods to deal with our challenges and take them on our national security metrics.
Thank you, sir. This is a real treasure trove, at least to say about the book. Ignored for a long time. I think these non-traditional challenges were the real existential challenges. We can also call them existential challenges. One example, how energy deal or energy plan is impacting the geostrategy of even our subcontinent. I mean, even if you look at through bilateral or sub-regional prism. One example I would like to cite here of MCC grant from the United States given to Nepal. It had worth of $500 million nearly. And that impacted Nepal's politics for more than 15 years. And finally dissolved last year. But unfortunately, political culture is changing very fast in Nepal. Nepali communists no longer helping there. Even a small fund, I mean, $500 million is hardly anything if you look from India's perspective. But in a small country like Nepal, it made a big deal for almost over a decade. It kept impacting the domestic politics. Energy technology in the wake of COVID-19, we also have to think much more about this kind of pandemic, which was never seen before and are still being debated whether it was lab originated or it was organically originated. Nobody knows about all these things. But this book is going to be kind of trailblazer for sure. In the long run too, I can see it's going to have a long shelf life, sir. Congratulations to both of you. I'm just not saying and not passing just my words. I'm saying it truthfully that these 15 chapters and references page can count I think 50, almost 50. So well researched books, so lucidly written, and each and every argument the book is presenting has a backup of solid references, without keeping a super academic tone. It is very readable at the same time. Now I will move to Rajesh sir. Rajesh sir, how would you like to reflect on your journey writing this book?
So thank you, Dr. Weil. Thank you, FCC, for giving this this platform. Yeah. Dr. Gupta has already explained the genesis of this book, so I will not repeat that. I will actually begin by saying that we have tried to we have identified 15 non-conventional factors, and we have tried to show how they impact national security. But the important thing is that we have also tried to determine and demonstrate the linkages which go beyond the obvious. Let me start with for instance, climate change. That's I think the first chapter in our book. And Dr. Gupta has already talked about how climate change, the tsunami, etc., how it impacts the terrain, how it impacts the sea, and therefore how it impacts our military preparedness as well. But there is another aspect too. Over the last 50 years, according to a study, more than 9 trillion glacier ice have melted, faster than expected because of global warming. Now, by 2100, it is expected that nearly 1/3 of the world's glaciers will disappear. Now, so what's the relevance of that, of all this to national security? Most of our major perennial rivers are fed by glaciers, right? Whether you talk about whether it's the Ganga, the Yamuna, the Brahmaputra, all of them. Now, when glaciers disappear or when they melt at the speed they have melted, abnormally high speed, there is a very real danger of the water source being cut off from our perennial rivers, and these perennial rivers will therefore turn into seasonal rivers. That is the danger. And it is not some kind of an imaginary danger, it's a clear present danger, maybe not immediately, maybe 50 years, 100 years from now, that is going to happen. Now, when that happens, just imagine the impact that will create on food availability, water availability, health issues, because if food becomes an issue, cultivation of food becomes an issue for lack of water, water for irrigation, water for drinking purposes. So all of that then start getting linked. And when food crisis emerges for a variety of reasons, but this reason is also going to be a very real reason if we do not tackle it at this stage. What happens when you have a food crisis? The French Revolution, as you all know, was triggered by a food crisis. Started with a famine. The people of France hoped desperately that the royal coffers will be opened up, food would be subsidized, they would get. It didn't happen because the royal coffers were in any case bled by the king, the queen, the family, etc. And we have that famous quote. We are not sure whether he actually said it, but the queen is supposed to have said it, that if people don't get bread, they can eat cake. We all know about that famous quote. So the French Revolution was triggered by that, and then of course there were several other elements involved, but that's how it started. Two other examples. In Mexico, 2007, there were massive food riots on the streets, which created a huge internal security situation. In 2008, in Haiti, a similar food riot. It was so bad that the UN peacekeepers had to be called in to, handle the situation. Now, therefore, food crisis can lead to internal security challenges and disturbances, and we have examples of it back home. The Mizo insurgency of the 1960s started with a food famine. That was how it started. It was not secession from India or whatever. It started from food famine. It was not handled properly or handled less than adequately by official authorities. Things became bad. The Mizo insurgent movement, the charter actually mentioned food as one of its important triggers for the unrest. It was much later that food was replaced by a demand for secession from India, but it started with the food crisis. That is how it began. And the Naxal Maoist movement also started with inadequacies in food, in natural resources, etc. Of course, later on it turned into a form of terrorism. We'll not get into that, but that's how it all started. So the point I was making is that climate change, look at the linkage, climate change, food, water, health, national security, internal disturbances. And in a society, when you have a massive food crisis, you have shortages of water, and that leads to health conditions, then who is interested in prioritizing education? Which family which is struggling to survive on a daily basis will think of education for their children? Education gets affected. The impact of not having a proper education can also be deleterious to national security. So all of that. So we've tried to, show all of that in our energy crisis, as Dr. Gupta mentioned, also Dr. Awaz talked about it. Now, energy crisis, we know how energy can be weaponized and has been weaponized to create challenges to national security. The 1973 oil crisis, we know what happened. Today, what's happening with Russia and Ukraine? And who's paying a price or who's told to pay a price? It's India, which has got nothing to do with that war in terms of tariffs. So these are all challenges that we have been facing. In 1973, for instance, if I remember right, after the OPEC countries placed an embargo on the US following the Yom Kippur War and and the US support to Israel, etc., our import bills also went up, and we requested OPEC countries to reconsider, because we were not involved. We had not even sort of established full diplomatic relations with Israel in those days, the 70s. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And our oil import bill shot up by 100% in 1974 as compared to 1970. So we've been paying the price for these kind of things. So this book identifies, as we have already said, 15 challenges. This does not mean that these are the only challenges, the non-conventional or the non-traditional challenges that are there. There could be more, or there could be variations of what we have said. But the important thing is that each of these challenges is linked to the other. And if a solution has to be found, that solution has to address all of it, and which is what Dr. Gupta said, there should be a holistic approach. Now, is that holistic approach sort of evident? To some extent, yes, but a lot of work has still to be done, and our authorities and others involved in the subject on this with the subject have to sort move faster. That is what I can say. And one last thing is that we have mentioned two non-conventional challenges which we thought are very relevant in the present context. And one is the power of narratives, how narratives are being built to either mislead, misinform, or to set the record straight and allow the reality or the truth to be presented. Both ways you can play around with the narratives, and that has happened. And the way we handle the narrative also reflects on our national security considerations. Uh, that is one, and the other is soft power. How do we leverage soft power to sort of give us the kind of strength that we require in handling these challenges? The soft power, of course, I must underline that soft power itself is of no use unless it is complemented by hard power or military power, the conventional power. But soft power is important in the sense, for a country like India, we have gained a lot through soft power, and that's an important element. However, soft power has to be leveraged in a way that it doesn't get sort of overexposed. Every now and then we keep saying that we have helped this person, we have helped that person, we have all that is fine, but unless you demonstrate that you can crack the whip when the need arises, then your national security considerations are not going to be taken care of just by soft power alone. And finally, this book ends with a short take on Operation Sindoor. Now, that is we feel that that is an excellent example of how a non-traditional challenge should be met. Now, terrorism by non-state actors backed by state actors is very different from terrorism by non-state actors alone. Now, most of the terrorism that we have faced, that India has faced, is through the backing of state actors, directly or indirectly. And I do not think in the history of our country since independence that we have actually responded with force or militarily to an act of terrorism unless Uri and Balakot came along. But that too was very limited in its scope. Operation Sindoor went beyond that. So that is another instance of how we have tackled a non-conventional challenge in a way that is different from the others. I will conclude by saying that the non-traditional challenges that we have mentioned, as Dr. Gupta said, can be prioritized by different countries in different ways. For India, what is important is what we have laid out in these 15 chapters, not necessarily in the same order that the chapters have been written. But I do think that there is a lot more awareness in official circles about the need to understand non-conventional challenges to national security in ways that are very different from what the National Security Advisory Board, for example, or the National Security Council, etc., used to view these challenges as. The whole purpose of the book is that we need to bring attention, we need to underline that non-traditional challenges are as important as what we call as traditional challenges in all these years. Thank you.
Thank you. These 15, yes, let's clap for you. Not to stop. So these classifications, 15 classifications are broadly done, no doubt about that. But the book also brings us to the cross sections where it necessitates possibly to have the greater roles of industry, academia, think tanks, and civil society as well. Because these 15 aspects are not necessary to be dealt by the government all the times. One is, of course, narrative. Sitting at FCC, we have all the reasons to talk a bit more about narrative. What kind of narrative? And energy. Energy is a subject because I am closely linked with, so I will just would like to draw everyone's attention, including the author's attention. In Nepal, China has been making an inroad in hydroelectricity sector. But in recent times, we have succeeded in giving an order of export 10,000 megawatt from Nepal. And they're working in that direction with a strong dichotomy when during the peak season, Nepal is importing unclean energy from us, from Muzaffarpur region in Bihar, and by NTPC because there's a thermal power. And we are also importing hydroelectricity from Nepal. So it's an ironical situation as of now. But going forward, I'm sure that Nepal will be able to export 10,000 megawatt to India, and that will really save Nepal's economy. And that will also earn good for us. We will be able to reclaim possibly some of the lost angles which are shaping up our bilateral relationship with Nepal at this point of time. So now India is going to import the electricity from Nepal, either made by Nepal or made through joint ventures, which is a welcome step, and that is helping us like anything. So this is one positive example which I am quoting here, how energy cooperation can also reshape our strategic choices in the region. Second is narrative. What kind of narrative are we grappling with in India? And rightly said by Rajesh, that it doesn't have to be a tailor-made solution for every country. India is not just a very big country. It's a civilizational power. So soft power is not going anywhere from India. It doesn't matter how much we will drum about it. Not necessarily we need to present our credential at every platform. But India is a superpower by any means, be it strategically or through knowledge power. But narrative war, because China is a glaring reality that it has big pull effect. You like it or not like it, but China is a reality. We all have to deal with that. And China has been pursuing encircling policy for India in different parts through different means possible. Nepal was one of the frontiers, and possibly still is a frontier for China. But Nepal is moving into different direction at this point of time, and the collective consciousness is very alert about China's intents, unfortunately. So in that time, I would like to get short views from both of you, sir. What kind of narrative are we really fighting at this point of time? Because a lot of resources are being given to create negative sentiments in the media, mainstream media, and then there is unfiltered media that is called social media. No one has command on that, and not everyone is keeping good virtue before posting anything on social media. So how stiff is the set we are dealing with the new age media, and how this kind of narrative is making an imbalance as well? I would like to know your views, and then others also.
So you have raised a very, very important question. Of course, narratives are not something new. It's been age old. So always a narrative is important. But how do you build a narrative? On what facts or misfacts do you build a narrative? But I think what has happened is that in today's day and age, and you refer to social media, there are 3-4 things which have happened, which has made narrative wars even more dangerous and very, very vicious. One is the technology that you mentioned. Today, nobody has a control of technology. That is point one.
Internet especially.
Secondly, today technology is owned by a handful of companies who are trillion-dollar plus companies, and they have their own agenda, their own way of dealing with it, and they're more powerful than the many times the states also. So one that ownership. So the whole media today, the mainstream media is taking a cue from social media. शाम को वो mainstream media social media पे क्या है, किसने क्या tweet किया, वो कर रहे हैं. And then you see people like Trump. Now they have completely discarded the mainstream media. In fact, he's suing the mainstream media every day, and instead he started his own what is called truth or something.
He left Twitter.
So these wars are now. What does a country like India or do? China has tried and built its own universe of social media and so on, and quite successfully, and is also shielded itself from the rest of it and also managed it. But other countries simply can't do it. So on social media, as you said, it's totally unrestrained. Negative sentiments are spread very easily, and the mainstream media is unable to do anything. So editorial thing more or less disappeared. There's no editorial control on the social media. So this is one very issue, and there is no. There's one aspect. The second thing is, are we even aware what is going on? You see, today, because of the power of these technology companies, social media, etc., so some narrative will start somewhere on whatever basis, and it spreads in a matter of seconds, and we are not even aware. So you are always found, at least in India, generally you are found in a defensive mode. And in media, defense is you actually lost the war. Yeah, but some countries like Pakistan, they have, I think, mastered the art of control. For instance, during Op Sindoor, in the first 24 hours, there were about at least 15 or 20 of Pakistani senior people, ISPR included. They had built a whole ecosystem, and they went onto these, mainstream media, on social media, through interviews, etc., are peddling untruths, left, right, and center. And there was no counter coming from India. There was, as a result, you found that one-sided narrative that really took wings, and it went all over. And we had to, pay for that. So there is always this. But एक मिनट Op Sindoor को थोड़ा अलग भी रख लें. Let's keep it aside. But what about generally about India as a country, our issues which are there in every country has issues. Now the way these can be amplified, and I give you examples today. For instance, in the West, there is whole ecosystem of academic institutions which now have made it a point to denigrate India, Hinduism, Hindu Sanatan Dharma, our values, etc. And they have penetrated many of our institutions. They are taking young people, researchers, taking it to them, and then getting those PhDs and those kind of things out. And they have, because academic journals which are powerful and they're read everyone, these people are writing. And these people are being supported by all kinds of people whom we have never heard of. Take this whole issue of democracy indices or human development indices, etc. These indices, most of them, when we have done a study in the VIF, most of them are written by a very small set of people, and they're mostly opinions, not based on any facts, but they are all, the way this whole Western media works, they're very, very powerful. They will have all these mainstream media peddling this. They would have interviews, they would have conferences, etc. And in these conferences, those who have a contributor not even invited. So today, the Western media is, and also Western think tanks, academic, they have all, in this narrative. I'm not saying about India only, about many other countries also. So it has become a very, very difficult task now to do it. And of course, in India, we have to probably get our act together because there are so many positive stories for us to tell, but we don't know how to tell them. We don't have, for instance, media correspondents in other countries. We are not, most of the think tanks abroad, they hardly have any presence of Indians. And there are a few Indians that maybe they are born and brought up there. They are very easily, influenced and brainwashed, etc. Our books are not sold. This book, for instance,
Yes.
I wonder whether it will ever be read or sold in any of those markets. You are doing a book discussion, but 3-4 book discussions, and that's the end of matter. So our think tanks also are essentially very weak in terms of finances. A little bit of finances that coming, God knows where are they coming from. So that also impacts. So in the narrative war, all these factors are very important, not just the media, but educational institutions, research institutions, what kind of agenda they pick up. For instance, I tell you, you talked about civilization, you talked about civilization. Now you tell me, we have a very deep civilizational link. India is an old civilization, etc. But in which international relations theory the Indian thought is mentioned? Nowhere. And it is partly we are to control because we also didn't talk about it. We also thought कि नहीं भाई realism ठीक है, constructivism ठीक है, institutionalism ठीक है.
Modern power risk comes into our mind.
But because
Like-
we never thought about it. It's not just Janakya only. You see the thought in Ramayana, the thought in Mahabharata, of course the thought of, let's say, Vivekananda or Aurobindo or Dayananda Saraswati and so many other regional also. It is full of strategic thinking because these people have thought so deeply. But we
and
have
they were also very interested with the modernist. They were real modernists. If we talk about Vivekananda,
yeah.
he was someone a real modernist. Leave aside his philosophical angle also, but he was a real modernist who
Absolutely.
could have looked, beyond his own time. So lot of things went into, lot of things simply lost because either side, if you really assess the situation, I think there has been lack of objectivity. Either side, if those things were left out, there was no reason why those things were left out. Today we have great opportunity to revive those things, and of course editorial freedom. We have Rajesh sir was the editor of Pioneer for a long time. So just before we finish it, I would like to get his 2 minutes view on this fact because he used to sit in real newsroom.
Okay, I'll make it short. Uh, there are so many reasons why we have not been able to build this ecosystem of narratives over the past few years. But let us understand the fundamental mistake or error that we have lived in. And that is that we have been essentially apologetic about our own civilizational achievements. We have been extremely reluctant to promote them, project them, not just in the country, across the world. Now, why did that happen? I don't want to get into that right now. Who is responsible? What regimes? What governments? What was their mindset? So that's not the issue right now. But the important thing is that we did not do it, and because we did not do it, others felt that we did not have it. And a few voices that emerged over the years were considered as fringe because nobody else took them seriously. The mainstream never took them seriously. Today we are trying to do that. How far are we going to succeed? I don't know, but it's a good beginning, and I hope that things can the narrative in the positive sense, in the civilizational and cultural values that we have, if that narrative is projected uh, aggressively, then maybe we can set things
Yes.
right.
I just want to add one. You see, when we talk about civilization narrative and so on, it is not just projecting India. What I'm trying to say is that in this civilization, there is something from the whole world. That is why it is important. Otherwise, every country can say, I am good, I am good. Obviously, they are good. But today, this is, at least I feel that our narrative is the one which is a humanistic narrative, which takes the whole world into account, which takes the whole population into account, and also non-living world also into account. Because ours is a narrative of unity. Now, this narrative, once, as you said, we did not talk about it. because firstly because we forgot. All of this is in some ancient language like Sanskrit, and we didn't know about it. And
Latin
and
is
not,
the same problem. Latin as
not
well.
only no, it
Many
was
other
deliberate here, because as Prime Minister has said, that Macaulay came with a certain mind.
agenda.
So first thing they did was destroy. Yesterday we were discussing something. कितना बता रहे थे कोई about 150,000 gurukuls were destroyed by Macaulay. He said, इनको खत्म कीजिए. Let's open up or other schools. So this change that took place, the result is in all those gurukuls, the local languages, the Sanskrit and the old what being taught. Now that was relevant, and that is relevant for the whole world. So we are talking about a message which is contained in something like Vasudev Kutumbakam or Vishwa Bandhutva, which is the universal brotherhood. So our message is usually humanistic, and in the Indian thought, it is the universalism of that human. So when we talk about Prime Minister Modi has also said globalization is okay, but we need to reform globalization, which is a humane globalization. Capitalism is okay, but we need a humane capitalism, inclusive capitalism. So the message of inclusivity, the message of oneness, etc. Now this is a message. Doesn't matter where it comes from, and I'm very happy that I think in this G20, which happened in last week, they have mentioned Ubuntu. Now, Ubuntu is exactly a Vedic thing, and it is there. This is I am because you are. So we are connected. So I'm very happy that there is a message of interconnection and connectivity even in Africa. So today, Africa and India can come together. The Vasudev Kutumbakam and Ubuntu can come together. And I think some of this we have talked about.
This is universal, not just meant for
Yeah,
India.
India, of
And
course.
to counter the bad part of narrative is to offer the objectivity. That's all.
Thank you, Atul. I will take this discussion a little more in the book because
Yeah.
you spoke in terms of the. I'll give you the lead, Prakash. My point was here. I was trying to link your soft power, link your energy power, food security into the current situation. Like India speaks of these are of a national, interest, and it's a priority for India. But when it comes to US, they are interfering in your food security. When it comes to the oil, that also then you are unable to buy oil from Russia because there is a pressure on that, which is also affecting your oil security. So weaponization of economy having a major impact on India or a national issues of India and other countries. How do you see it from your point of view? Because I did go through all your point, and what was interested in this book, Dr. Arvind, was that you link India to each sections. That Indian concern. What is India? What is? Could you please elaborate on those points?
That's of course the real politic that we are talking about. But the question is, this will always happen. You see, why non-traditional security issues have become important is also because of the word that you used, weaponization. Today, because of interconnected world, everything can be weaponized. Sanctions are really one example of that. Now, the question before us is, how do we deal with this? Now, I think the way India is dealing with this is in two ways. One is that we are now promoting self-reliance to the extent possible. Self-reliance used to be an old goal. The idea of Swaraj, for instance, which started way back. In fact, it was Shivaji who first talked about Swaraj, and then later on people like Dayanand Saraswati who talked about Swaraj, and then it became part of our national freedom struggle, etc. Swaraj was really that self-reliance. Yeah. And Swaraj in a wider sense, political sense, economic sense, and so on. So I think we have to get back to that Swaraj. But that doesn't mean our linkages, because we are a very universal people. We tend. So one is Swaraj. The other is engagements, like now looking at Global South. We must also understand that there is a world beyond this geopolitics of great powers. So today, I think Global South has become very important, and Voice of Global South is one idea. And there, I think today, countries of Global South are also quite powerful countries. They also have a lot of capacities and capabilities. They may not be at that, but they are somewhere here, and they're very important. As regional countries, they are very important. So getting them together. And on energy and health issue, and like for instance, the Prime Minister has talked about International Solar Alliance. A lot of countries have come. That's one major initiative which India took. He's talked about one world, one grid. He's talked about one health. So this is that idea of sharing. Today, Global South can share. So I think this is the way we will probably handle these issues. Of course, there will always be impediments. Sometimes we may not be able to do it because our capabilities in the Global South are also limited. But as China has shown, they could do it, others can also do it. But I think here linking up, for instance, if we link up with the today with Africa, and Africa is the African continent will grow for the at least next 70 years quite effortlessly, despite their problems. Now that is where I think India can link up. So there is like-minded countries we can also link up.
Yes, Africa.
I have two questions regarding this book. One to Dr. Gupta and another to Mr. Singh. Let me begin with Dr. Gupta. So that is about the very definition and identification of this non-traditional security source. I think why I'm asking this question is that you know that these days one hears a lot from our Supreme Court. One judgment after another, they talk of that basic structure of the Constitution without, defining it in the sense that, it all depends on which judge, thinks that what basic structure is all about. Similarly, when one talks of these non-traditional security issues, as you rightly said, is that going to be open-ended or that is there is a time when to close everything in the sense that you said that when the thing started in 1998, what you were identifying as the security issue certainly not the same now because it has been expanded like anything. Everything now can be put under this definition or umbrella of security. And here, if that is the case, where you will put this concept of course, you did talk about in one of your answers about this information warfare or this thing. I'm going little beyond that. That cognitive security in the sense that it is very easy to blame your enemies that they are indulging in this information warfare. But the point is that we are sidestepping the basic hard fact. And that is the point that, these enemies of yours, they are weakening us, weakening our morale, weakening our governance system. And when they are doing it, they are not doing it through their think tanks, or like you said that Pakistani media how they did it first to one or two. Actually, the danger is that when your own people here in the Indians, when they buy them, have we done any systematic studies on that aspect? Because you talked about this foreign press. Actually 10 12 years back I wrote an article and I did a very I think one day research. I went through New York Times of 10 days, Washington Post of 10 days, highly critical pieces on in India and what not. But the point is that if you go little further, you said that Vivekananda Foundation is doing it and it's worth pursuing it further. That from where these foreign press are getting this material, they are getting this material from Indians. They quote Indians, quote Indian institutions, they quote Indian politicians, and then they publish it, and then after that it becomes magnified and things of that sort. So where exactly this aspect you would categorize as? It's not that one-sided, that they are doing it. I think these very Indians, our demoralized people, our politicians, some of our media people, when they buy that narratives and they further magnify that, So will they be considered the same way we were considering the terrorists inside? That is a question to you. And then the other question again is a international thing. I think you talked about this promotion of culture, sorry, soft power. My point is that soft power is a positive thing. It is usually associated in a reference or in a narrative which is positive in nature. Like we talked about yoga, we talked about Ayurveda, we talked about our Prime Minister talking of world as a family, as you yourself rightly pointed out. If this is positive, then how that can be a challenge, and how can that be a non enemy with a non-traditional challenge to security? So don't you think that putting that in culture or soft power promotion is slightly out of order to be in this book? Thank you.
India is a open society. So this is bound to happen. A lot of people will be here and
Will it continue to be open-ended or it will be
okay, let me first, non-traditional security issues is an open. In fact, we have tried to, we didn't go into academic definitions of security, non-security, etc., because that then it would have become an academic. There is a very much, sometimes, when definitional issues come, just use the common sense and you will get the answer. A lot of questions can be answered by common sense. We said that something which is military, directly related to military, directly related to the military operations, that is your traditional security. But security per se is something which impinges on your sovereignty or capability to act. That could come from energy, that could come from so many other ways. That's your non-traditional, if it is not directly related to the military, indirect pathways. So that is a simple definition we took. That's why I think we talked about demography also in this, which over. So all that we have. So it's an open-ended thing, and very much some issue may be, as we said, some issue may be a security issue for some countries. It may not be. And yes, we also look into this debate. In fact, our former national security advisor said, okay, look, if you put everything into the national security basket, then what will you deal with it? And that's right. If you, then it becomes difficult to deal with every issue. But the issue is not going to wait for that. You can deal with it or you can't deal with it. The issue is there. You decide whether you want to deal with it or no. Now it is becoming clear that weaponization can happen all the time. So everything has become, unfortunately, and that makes it difficult for the national security planner to plan for everything. But that is the nature of the beast. The second point about people are using Indian narratives to say. You see, I would say that they are using Indian narratives, but selectively. They want to say that there are positive Indian narratives also that they never use. So in a democracy like ours, where a lot of debate happens, when Supreme Court may lawyers jaake, they are arguing these things, editorials are being written, there will be all kinds of things written. But the people who are writing, particularly the media, are they being objective? You see, you as media people are trained to look at things objectively, weigh, and then give an opinion. But the problem with the media is that is a motivated media, because they will only pick up those things. There are so many positive things that happen, whether it is in technology front or whether it is in education front, whether it, how we're dealing with climate change, etc. There are massive positivity, but they will not do it. So that is how we realize that it is a part of a narrative warfare which is going on. So narrative warfare is happening. It always happened. It is there. You have to deal with it. And I think I will not give too much of lose my shirt on कि कौन anti India है, कौन positive India है. That becomes very clear by the motivations that they have, and we will deal accordingly. It should not stop the debate. That's what I'm trying to say. A debate in India must always go on. But we must have that vivek, that discerning thing, ki what exactly is the motivation behind it. But of course, supposing there is a narrative here. If it is not quoted by New York Times or Washington Post, nobody bothers. Yeah, ठीक है, चल रहा है. There is a positive things happening, there are negative things happening. Our own media will take place. Nobody loses shirt. It's only when Washington Post comes and say something, then we get all very worried, and then we make that also in news. So I think we have also to our strength is that open society and dialogue which must continue, and but we must have a discernment as to what is really going to hurt us, and then we should deal with it. Then
If I can add just one thing, before Bihar went for poll, I got a news story said by one of the bankers in Middle East, and the headline reads it: India's poorest and youngest electorate prepares for polls.
so
This is economist story. When I refuted and tried clarifying this thing to the person who sent it to me, he got emotional that I wrong that I shared it with you. He was an Indian. So another thing, I'm not biased against NYT and other publications. I read them. But again, to my dismay, most of the time they disappoint me. To the Nepal crisis, they had given a headline that something I'm not remembering exactly, but there was a black smoke in the sky. Just so NYT, I'm not saying that do sorted kind of journalism or wrong kind of journalism all the time. But yes, most of the times they get fair, at least to get a good title for the article, news story especially.
Yes. There's another question. How promotion of soft power become a security threat?
Yes,
I think that's a very definitional problem.
okay. Now, the promotion of soft power, essentially, we have explained, has to do with uh, the the promotion of one's civilizational and cultural value system. Now, how does that become a challenge, a security challenge on top of that? Now, let's take an example. Now, I am a country. I have a country before me. I am dealing with that country. If I study that country's civilizational and cultural history, I will get indications of how it has grown, what kind of value systems it has involved, whether it is aggressive, whether it has been inclusive, whether it has been accommodative, whether it has been territorial, etc., etc., etc. Because those are value systems that get imbibed in a nation and which gets carried over generations. Now, if I'm not able to understand the cultural psychology of the country before me, I am quite, there is a very good chance that I'll be unable to read its motives towards me. We have made that mistake with China. We have not studied. China is as old as civilization or even older, whatever. Anyway, its civilization matches our civilizational history. It is as deeply civilizational as we are. But study their civilization, study our civilization, study the values they have imbibed over thousands of years, study the values that we have imbibed over the years. And if we have done that kind of a study, and then we would have known, we would not have to wait we would not have had to wait until 1962. We would have known what kind of a nation it is, what kind of value system does it propagate, what does it say, and what does it actually mean. If only we had studied its civilizational history, we would have learned a lot. Similarly, people who want to study India will also study India and understand its civilizational history. How territorial has India's civilizational history been? How aggressive have we been? uh, you've talked about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Which other country does China have that value system? No. So that is what I meant as a challenge to national security. If I am unable to understand the civilization value of another country, that will pose a challenge to my security because of my misreading of its history. That is what is meant by this. Uh,
else, soft power also has its uses and misuses. Lot of, in fact, in history, lot of wars have been on these issues, identity issues, which are coming from culture, religion, that, etc. I mean, we have had examples of crusades, and that's one part of it. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is something which begins to unite. Culture can also be used to unite people, culture can also be used to divide people. So soft power is also in some sense a attribute which a country can use whichever way. So I think in that sense it becomes a national security issue there.
Thank you. Yes, please. Can I have PM question? Yes, we will take both of you. Yeah, PM. Yeah.
Hi, good evening. Acha, okay. It's absolutely an interesting book. I mean, whatever you discussing, it is really well. So, hello. It's not working. It's okay. Okay. So, amazing point which you raised here. So, I think one point you raised, like Rajesh Ji said, that if we have courage to say that we are not sitting on the fence, we are sitting on our ground, loudly and clearly, I think most of the time India has been heard across the world. You can take many examples in the last 4 or 5 years. But I would like to know from Mr. Gupta, see, the China also faced the same kind of challenges in the last 30 years because we were at par at that point of time. So how did they navigate through this narrative challenge? All the silent enemies were inside China. Can you just give an idea about that?
Quite early, and particularly after Xi Jinping came to power, that is about now 13 years ago. He went out in a very systematic. So first thing they did was they launched what they call the Belt and Road Initiative, which was a small initiative at that point of time, which has now expanded into something huge, which increased their, engagement with the rest of the world. On top of that, he has now come up with a global security initiative. On top of that, he has now come out with a global civilizational initiative. Even China, which is a communist country, which has gone through the cultural revolution, which was really there out to destroy their civilization culture, now it's coming to the view that no, civilization is important and they're going back. Now they're saying we are 10,000 years old civilization. And Confucianism, in a selective way, they are picking up. And around the global civilizational initiative, and also just as we are talking about Vasudev Kutumbakam, they are also talking about a community of shared interests. But he says we should all, subscribe to that. And if you do that, then all the benefits coming from the so they are also beginning to do that. The Russians are saying in their 2023 foreign policy concept, they say Russia is a civilization state. You see, what's happening today is that as the Western hegemony begins to decline or starts coming under question, then that order which was imposed by the Western countries after the Second World War, now that is fraying. So all that multiple civilizations which were there, which got suppressed because the West said modernization means only Western modernization, not African modernization, not your trajectory or that you took. But those now multiple modernizations are now coming up. I'm just saying, "Nahi bhai, aapko to humne dekh liya. We saw your modernization. This is what you basically gave us poverty and all these conflicts, etc." So now the world, as our chairman Guru Mufti says, the world is now going from anti-civilizational, which was really the Western construct, to a civilizational world. And in that, now the countries which have a long history, they are now coming as the civilizational state. So the concept of civilizational state is coming to the fore. If you remember, there was also this book which was written by Clash of Civilizations by Huntington. Now, he said that there will be clash of cultures and people will die and etc. And basically, he was saying that Western civilization is a threat. There are other civilizations which are coming up, Islamic, this, that, and so on. But I think Vasudev Kutumbakam is an alternative to that. It recognizes that there are civilizations, but the civilizational, if they also can connect. So there is one narrative which is of Huntington, which says civilizations divide, cultures divide. There's another narrative of Vasudev Kutumbakam which says no, civilizations can connect also. It's up to don't know how we take it.
Good evening, sir. It is wonderful to be the part of this discussion. My question is from either side of the coin, from the silent enemy to effective friends. What I need to know is, like, once we recognize, like, these all are the, I mean, non-state actors, these MNCs and these narratives, these all are like enemy. So at the same time, they are effective friends as well. So what is the roadmap of India to project these effective friends and to project MNCs, to project soft power, so that once the hegemony of India could create, and India could be the voice of this global South. Thank you.
So it's easier to identify enemies than to identify friends in today's world. Uh, so I would not use the word friend as easily as we have used the word enemy here. I would say that there are countries or there are uh, people whose interests at times align with that of us, and to the extent that happens, and to the time limit that happens, they are our friends. Not beyond that, not before that. That is one thing. And so, once we have this kind of a philosophical outlook or a pragmatic outlook, call it what you may, then identification of people who support us throughout all these challenges becomes easier.
State actors, how we are going to promote them in a sense of effective Indian voice.
Promoting of non-state actors?
Yes, for
in what sense?
the MNCs and all other
Okay.
things, like, which can create a very good narrative for India on entire globe. Thank you.
All right, all right. Now, so I think Dr. Gupta mentioned some solutions to that. How do you promote them? One is by giving them that space, by creating a space for them through your own efforts. Now, those efforts could be in terms of funding, in terms of providing them a global platform somewhere, etc. That is one way of helping them out. The problem I see, you see, China does it very effectively, but China is not a democracy. How do we do that? You can't arm twist NGO or any other MNC or anybody else to do what you want, you hope should be done, even if what you are saying is right. Even so, you cannot force somebody to do it. So therefore, the coercive approach will not work. It is only the persuasion that can work. Sometimes it doesn't work. So that is the only way I see by which we can do. But to what extent we have done it? Yes, we have not done enough in that direction. So we can't grumble about the results because we have not done enough. We need to do a lot more. We may not get the results to the extent of our efforts, but we definitely will get more results than we are getting today.
Any other questions? Before we give the mic for the vote of thanks to Prakash, I would like to present a small token to our chief guests. And if I can hand over the gift to them, and then I'll give Prakash to speak on the concluding remarks. Thank you.
Let's have a group photograph. Group photograph.
Yeah, correct. Okay. PM, you want to give the vote of thanks? Yes. PM. Anyway, I think, friends, we had a wonderful and highly educative evening. and we dealt this book deals with very relevant issues. The very fact that we all came here at this height of pollution here in Delhi, and they did point out this environmental challenge. Nothing could have been that way more relevant than what we talked this in the evening. And as our distinguished speakers, they elaborated on the points that have been mentioned in their book or that have been written. I think I can only summarize them from whatever I could understand from the discussions. One is that the security as such is becoming highly holistic as a concept. And I think anything that challenges human survival, or for that matter, national survival, is becoming a security issue, whether traditional or non-traditional. Anything that challenges or creates no problem for this survival. But we should depart with a positive note in the sense that, as Ambassador Gupta did point out, or rather, that soft power, our Prime Minister is talking of opportunities uniting. It is not a question of class of interest. It is a question of bringing the world together. So there are also opportunities. So we have to identify those opportunities and work on them. So it is wonderful to have you all. And thank you very much. And I am really grateful on behalf of the FCC that you could spare time and talk to our members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the book is available outside for anybody who is interested in buying in a concessional rate and get the signature of both the co-author and the co-author. Thank you.